Welcome to Relentless Rock Ministries. Today we begin our study on the Gospel of Luke. So let's get right to it by looking at Luke chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile an account of the things accomplished among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. It seemed fitting for me as well, having investigated everything carefully from the beginning, to write it down and write it out for you in consecutive order, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the exact truth about the things you have been taught. What we see here is Luke opening his gospel with an address to the person Theophilus. Luke goes on to explain that he has compiled a narrative about Jesus Christ based on written sources, eyewitness accounts, and historical record. Theophilus appears to be the benefactor behind this gospel. In the first century, wealthy noblemen commissioned authors to write books, so this wouldn't have been a very unusual event. And Theophilus appears to have commissioned Luke to write a comprehensive, orderly, historical account of the story of Jesus and his followers. As a traveling companion of Paul, Luke wanted to provide a comprehensive and authoritative Greek gospel for the growing world of Gentile believers. And Luke may have used the commission that he received from Theophilus to accomplish this. So, I've seen this a lot of times, and it begs the question, who is Theophilus? Well, we have evidence from the historian Josephus and archaeology that suggests that Theophilus was a well-known high priest. In Josephus's book, The Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus introduces his readers to the high priest Theophilus, who, by the way, may have been the brother-in-law of Caiaphas, the man that was in collusion with the Roman government and Pontius Pilate that actually put Jesus to death. So it begs the question, is it possible that a Sadducee and high priest might have become a believer? Well, Luke himself tells in Acts chapter 6 verse 7 that there were very many of the priests who were becoming obedient to the faith. Luke goes on to admit, however, that he is not the first to write about the deeds and teachings of Jesus. And he notes that his gospel does draw on those earlier accounts that he claims that he studied carefully, investigated carefully the matters at hand, and incorporated orally transmitted teachings and compiled eyewitness accounts. He claims he did a very thorough investigation, in other words. The stories and the oracles in the first two chapters of Luke originate from Hebrew Aramaic believers of Judea and Galilee. So let us continue now and finish up with our readings of what we're going to be talking about today. In the days of Herod, the king of Judea, there was a priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah, and he had a wife from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. They were righteous in the sight of God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and the requirements of the Lord. But they had no child because Elizabeth was barren, and they were both advanced in years. In the days when King Herod the Wicked ruled the land, a righteous priest named Zacharias served the Lord in the land of Judea. Zacharias and Elizabeth, like Abraham and Sarah, were old and advanced in age. Elizabeth was well past childbearing years, and both of them came from the priestly line of Aaron. He the son of a priest, and she the daughter of a priest. The Torah allows priests to marry outside of the Aaronic family, so long as they marry Israelite women. But to be married to a priest's daughter, that safeguarded the purity of the family line and conveyed double honor, double blessing. In the Bible, Zacharias or Zechariah are common names for priests. And Zechariah, and I'm going to call him Zechariah from this point on, shared the name with his ancestors. It is believed that Zechariah could trace his family lineage all the way back to Zechariah ben Iddo. Zechariah ben Iddo is the famous priest and prophet who wrote the book of Zechariah. Elizabeth's father named his daughter after Elisheva bat Aminadav, the wife of Aaron, the original high priest, or the first high priest after Moses named him, and matriarch of the lineage of Aaron. Their names are significant to the story of Zechariah, which means the Lord remembers. Elisheva or Elizabeth means the oath of God. In the days of Zechariah and Elizabeth, the Lord remembered his oath to bring a Redeemer. According to local Christian tradition, Zechariah and Elizabeth lived in the village of En-Karim. And in those days, En-Karim sat in a canyon in the hill country of Judea, approximately 5 miles from the old city of Jerusalem. But today, En-Karim is a southwest suburb of Jerusalem, partially surrounding the ancient village. And in that suburb, the Church of the Visitation claims to mark the home of Zechariah. Archaeological remains below the church, where they dug, suggest the presence of a second temple or second era temple mikveh, or a baptismal, such as archaeologists often find in the remains of priestly homes. Now, Luke introduces Zechariah and Elizabeth as righteous ones, or tzaddikim, righteous in the sight of God, walking blamelessly in all of the commandments and requirements of the Torah. This means that they practiced scrupulous observance of Torah, for it is not the hearers of the Torah who are righteous before God, but the doers of the Torah. Despite their great piety, however, Zechariah and Elizabeth had no children because Elizabeth was barren, and they were both well advanced in years. Luke wants his readers to know that their childlessness was not a punishment for sin, and he emphasizes that. After all, Jewish law did allow for Zechariah to divorce Elizabeth or to take a second wife who could bear him a son. But Zechariah's steadfast devotion to Elizabeth indicates his love for Elizabeth. Zechariah and Elizabeth remind us a lot of Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Rachel, the parents of Samson, and the parents of Samuel. When the Bible tells the story of a child who is miraculously conceived in a barren womb, it does so to emphasize that the child's destiny is preordained by God for some great purpose. And we find that according to John chapter 1, verse 13. The child of a barren womb is born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. Amen and amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord's face shine upon you and give you peace. Amen and amen.